Hello and welcome back. Got one more match to go on the night. I'm Randy Buehler. I'm going to be casting it with Bob Maher. Sorry things didn't work out with that Paradoxical Storm, Bob. It has been super fun watching you play it. I'm kind of glad you ran it, but there are so many Stony Silences in the world right now.
There really are. And it was just, once I saw the 3 decks in our pod, I knew that it was pretty much a long shot. Don't get me wrong, came down to the last match, but yeah. I also mulliganed a lot tonight. Like, I have a lot of fringe cards in my deck that I seem to draw a lot. And it's just the way it goes sometimes.
So are you happy with Vault Key in the deck? I know that that's a combo that Reed was really the first guy to build this deck. He did not run it, but I know I've thought about putting Vault Key in this deck too. I don't know if you passed judgment on that yet. You still like it?
A lot of it depends on the meta. I actually like it versus shops. Like, there's always games you have to win on the draw, and even when they get a bunch of pieces out, a lot of times you could get yourself to a point where if you only have to tutor from one or the other piece, that just wins the game.
Yep.
So you have situations like, I don't main deck a Hercules Recall, I just main deck a Chain, and that's because I have Vault Key. So in game 1, I can try and get myself to the point where I take all the turns.
Got it.
And I don't know that it's right. It certainly helped in the online heads-up and tournaments I played in. The Vault Key was really great, but I was playing against a lot of shops.
Okay.
And I think against everything else, it's just cute. I actually really wanted to take those out, put in a Chalice of the Void. I actually really like Chalice of the Void in Outcome.
Interesting.
Well, you get to drop your 0-mana artifacts and then play it. So
sure.
It can be devastating in the mirror. And
I feel like Chromebox is basically just a 0 to pick up with Paradoxical Outcome so often that Chalice sounds way better at doing that thing.
Yeah, I would love to actually go down one Chromebox or none. I mean, occasionally it's nice because it produces mana, but Chromebox is bad.
Yep.
And then I actually really like having Chalice on 1 against the Mentor decks.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah, no, I feel like there was this window after Kaladesh came out for a couple of months where you could just destroy people in Magic Online with Paradoxical Outcome. And then all the Stony Silence. I blame Rich Shea, ultimately. Like, Rich was like, how am I going to beat that deck? And Rich is the one who really started the whole main deck Stony Silence trend in Mentor decks. And Stony Silence just seems so depressingly well positioned, especially now that the Workshop deck has Walking Ballista too. So it's actually a card Mentor can feel decent about in that matchup. It's just not as much fun now that all the Stony Silences have come out to play.
I agree. I mean, and Outcome is the only deck I've played for a while now. I'm basically since Vintage, the Vintage Champs.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, like I said, I should have made a couple of changes to my deck. I wasn't originally intending to run the exact same 75, but that was the way it went, and I'm happy enough with the deck.
Yeah, I mean, you put up a perfectly reasonable result. I mean, you see, you're going to finish middle of the pack. You're not going to get to the playoffs, but you went 3-3. It's not like you got crushed, and that's 3-3 despite how many of your 6 opponents had the Stony Silence? 4? 5? 3 this week.
And I'm trying to think, David and in the first round, Rachel, did they both?
Yeah, 5 out of 6.
Yeah, 5 out of 6. And I misclicked against David, so
right.
I mean, who knows where it goes from there. So, like I said, I mean, the deck, that's actually the depressing part. The deck is actually somewhat resilient, and it's just so fast.
Yeah.
It really is a crazy high power level. So, I mean, it's with good reason that all those decks run all the Stony Silences.
Yeah. All true, but we're done with Paradoxical Outcome for tonight anyway. We've got one match left. It's going to be Chris Pikula and Eric Froehlich. It's a Jeskai Mentor versus a Blue-White Mentor. So Pikula's got main deck Pyroblasts. We'll see if those help. He's got Dak Faden. We'll see if those help. Does not have Sudden Shock, interestingly, which is actually the thing I really liked in Rachel's version of the Jeskai Mentor list. Just the ability to Sudden Shock an enemy Mentor, I think, is potentially really good. But we'll see. Eric's obviously going to have a more consistent mana base because he's just blue-white, and maybe his Wastelands are going to hurt Chris. So that will be the last match of the evening. And at stake is a spot in the wildcard group. The wildcard group is it's going to be another group of 4. The last spot in the playoffs is going to be on the line. that'll come up. Next week, we have, of course, the giant relegation battle. At least that's how I think about it. And then the week after that, we'll wind up with the wild card group, where I guess we already know it's Brian Kelly. We already know it's Rachel Agnes. We already know, and now we're going to find out who the third member of that group is. And then they get joined by the winner of the losers group. Interesting that no one has managed to 3-0 a group yet.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Sounds like our match is ready, so let's go find out who's going to advance. All right, here we go. Chris Pikula's mentor deck on the top of the screen. Eric Froehlich's on the bottom. Eric says he never draws main opening hand Black Lotus. All of that salt, all of that investment in karma over the course of this evening is finally paying off. And with it, he can cast a blank card, a Stony Silence that isn't actually good in the matchup.
Yeah, that's what you're going to hear about. The only time I draw Lotus has nothing to do with it. I mean, he could still hit something off Ponder, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think you keep that hand. I mean, it's still a Force of Will. It's got a Ponder. It's got good mana. I think you just Flooded Strand Ponder and hope you hit something? Or how do you sequence that?
I don't think you keep that hand necessarily.
You mulligan? Wow, okay, he's going to mulligan. It is kind of a 6-card hand because of the Stony Silence being effectively blank in this matchup, but now he's got a 6-card hand with a blank, so effectively a 5-card hand. This hand just looks worse to me.
This hand is a little bit worse, but I still don't think you can hold on to the first hand. You have the Stony Silence in hand. You have 2 Force of Wills, which aren't great in the opener in this matchup. And
I mean, they stop any kind of degenerate quick Mentor, quick Jace. They're not great in the matchup, though. That's fair.
They're not great. And if your Ponder gets mental misstepped, which if they draw it, it will. You're in terrible shape.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about you're basically all in on that Ponder, and Chris did have the mental misstep, so that would not have worked out well. Interesting. The Strip Mine. Eric thinks his Wasteland effects are going to hurt Chris here. He thinks that Chris's colored mana is a little sketchy. I was listening to him earlier basically say, don't bother splashing red in your Mentor deck. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
in general, I agree with him. It's not necessarily going to work out in this situation.
I do feel like the red splash is worth it. In a Mentor-heavy field, having Sudden Shock feels powerful to me. But...
Now, going into this group of 4, having Pyroblast seemed really powerful to me. I mean, you could pretty much put all of the other 3 players on a lot of blue spells.
Yeah, that's the way Chris drew it up. And it's good. We'll see.
Yeah, this is where things just start to come off the rails. Missing land drops, not any real action in his hand, and just staring down the inevitable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is set up for a Brainstorm fetch land turn, followed by a Gush into Jace the Mind Sculptor turn. Eric is not going to like what he sees here.
No. I don't even know that you're looking to Brainstorm fetch land unless you want to get rid of the other Jace, but I'm perfectly happy just waiting for my 4th land and playing a Jace, figuring it's going to get countered.
I think you Gush into the Jace. Like, there aren't that many lands. I don't think you can afford to wait forever.
Sure.
But if you're going to Gush into the Jace anyway, then I think Brainstorm for... I don't know. You're right. It's not obvious that he should Brainstorm here, because he only has 1 mediocre card, and it's a potential pitch card to Force a Will. Yeah, maybe you're right. You just don't bother Brainstorming. Wow. It's not going to help him cast Mind Sculptor, but... Whoa, so Chris went to his main phase.
He just wanted to get 1 card deeper.
I guess he's not planning to Gush for Jace here.
No, I mean, and now maybe he's shuffling away. Like, what's his worst card? A Gitaxian Probe, which is still interesting.
It's the second Jace and the Git Probe.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to shuffle. I guess he should shuffle.
He's getting so far ahead on land drops, though I really wouldn't want to lose that second Jace. I think it's nice just being perfectly happy when it gets countered.
Then cast Gitaxian Probe and redraw it. Although he should be redrawing Island here, I think.
Yes.
I would want a fourth landed play. I mean, it feels like the way this game is played out, it's kind of a control battle.
Yes.
Having no land drops still good, even in Vintage.
The way that brainstorm worked out, and I guess if you're planning around like worst case scenario, I don't draw any blanks. Well, okay, fine. You're still in a pretty good spot if you don't draw any blanks.
He put the island as the bottom card.
Wow.
Yeah, this doesn't let him. If he played an island on that turn, then he could next turn Gush Jace with Pyro backup.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I think he needed to play island that turn. I don't like the way Chris sequenced that brainstorm. But I like land more than the average person, I think.
I think that goes way back with you. I think you tried for a long time to get that Shard Phoenix Forbid deck with more lands and spells.
I got it to 29. I played it at 29 lands. All right, so here's the Jace. Doesn't really mind getting this one Force of Will, given that he's got a backup.
Right.
I don't think you force here, not with a backup in your hand.
I definitely wouldn't. No, I think
right?
You're already so far ahead. I mean, you have twice as many land, you have an extra card in hand. I think you just keep grinding away.
He's also seen the Flusterstorm, for the record.
Oh, fair.
All right, Eric is going to float 2 mana, Gush, and cross his fingers.
Unless he just digs. I mean, he might be looking to get more lands in play.
He did have exactly enough cards in his graveyard to dig there. I think I would have played it the same way Eric is.
I agree, because then you can still lay a land and dig with your Flusterstorm up.
Mm-hmm. Found Force of Will, blue card.
Now, I don't know that you necessarily want to dig when you already have 7 cards in hand, but hopefully you'll find some sort of artifact mana. Or something to do with it, I should say. Chris has decided his Force of Will is just worth the Flusterstorm, I guess.
I still feel like he could have had untapped red mana this turn if he played the. If he sequenced the brainstorm differently. Because now Eric's dig is going to resolve.
Yep, and it'll just put him to 7 cards, so he's not wasting anything either.
So Chris, what did Chris pitch to the Force of Will? I just forget what he had in his hand. He pitched.
I believe it was a 1 blue draw spell. It was a Ponder or something.
Maybe it was a probe. He is still set up to Gush Jace with Pyro backup, and he's going to need all of that. Like right now, Eric is set to Force of Will the Jace, and Chris is essentially all in on that Pyroblast.
Right, like if he hits a mental misstep off this dig.
Yep.
It's a tough spot.
Forcing a blue card or mental misstep is got Eric right back in this. Ancestral Mox Sapphire, not bad.
Those are good ones too.
I'll run it. Let's see what happens.
Oh, and a Pearl.
Kind of a swing and a miss.
No, Wasteland for his only red source. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to stop him from getting Jace down.
Yeah, no, reasonable cards. They're not going to stop Jace from coming down next turn, though.
Eric, oh wow, Eric just getting rid of the Stony Silence.
Yeah, I think with Mentor in your hand, you'd rather have the Pearl to follow up, and this Stony is blank. Especially you have 2 Moxes. Eric's drawn both his Moxes, so the Stony is worse than blank.
Right, and I was, off the top of my head, I was just thinking of playing the Mox. I had forgotten about getting a token off of it.
All right, here is the Gush. Island Wasteland, not exactly what Chris wanted. But it did make sure that he has a land drop for this turn. Yeah, Jace with Pyro backup, and hope Eric didn't get enough done last turn to stop you.
Now, Eric has seen the Pyroblast, so it might just be oh well.
Yeah, I mean, the Gitaxian Probe has value post-Mentor. Yeah, I like that decision from Eric. It's not obvious, but
I like it a lot. Yeah, again, I think Eric's going to have a great turn next turn.
He gets to go Mentor, Pearl, Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah. And he'll have a plow up in case Chris finds something.
Yeah, Chris's hand doesn't do anything about the Mentor, huh?
No.
Wow, nothing. Let's take a look. What you got? Yeah, and with no answer to the Mentor, I think Chris has to try to stem the flow of cantrips.
I totally agree.
Eric going to get done as much as possible. Chris redraws the island he put back with Jace last turn. Now, all right, he's got to hope there's a swords in these next couple.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would gush first there.
Before he has to put back?
Yeah, he doesn't need a ton of land.
Yeah, now he's kind of brainstorm locked himself, huh? This Ancestral only sees one fresh card.
I mean, but he can still gush after. I mean, I would have much rather gushed and then hit Ancestral, run the Ancestral, and then the Jace. That would have... Wow.
Not even a fetch land. Like, not only are they lands, they're lands that don't shuffle. Yeah, float white. Survey says... Pearl and a strip mine. Wow. That is 6 blanks, basically. How many actual cards has he seen? 1, 2, 5. Yeah, 6 blanks.
Yeah, now he knows Jace is pretty much good as dead. Wow, that was a tough turn.
Yeah. Pyroblast just sitting in his hand, almost mocking him. Eric saw it and played around it skillfully. Down goes Jace. And there's a wasteland for the volcanic. Look at what happened to Chris's board. Wasn't he a mile ahead like 5 minutes ago, Bob?
Yes, this all fell apart that turn when he had 4 lands and 5 cards in hand. Eric's 2 lands and 4 cards in hand. And then all of the gush, dig through time shenanigans happened. It really hurt. Running his Force of Will into that Flusterstorm was really painful.
And I feel like there were a bunch of decisions he could have made with the Brainstorm. Well, Mentor's not nothing. Oh, Eric's got it covered. He's got the Force of Will. But you've got the Pyroblast. He only has 1.
It'll get Pyroblasted. Then it'll get plowed, but it'll at least make a couple of tokens.
All right. It was a good draw. Yeah, he had so many options with that Brainstorm where he could have run it on Eric's end step as Brainstorm fetch, then untap, and gush into Jace. He chose to run it main phase, but then didn't play a land drop. He could have just not run it main phase because his hand was reasonable, especially he played it where the second Jace had value, so none of his cards were actually bad. Just a whole bunch of little tiny sequencing decisions that could have sent this game down a super different road.
I would have liked Chris to just say go there. I don't think he's under that much pressure. He's at 10. The next hit's not going to kill him. Then he can just play a land, play the Mentor, then go Lotus, Pearl.
Oh, I would want to get my Mentor down if I'm Chris. What if Eric plays a cantrip? It's a catastrophe. Like 4 turns into 7. He's 2 cantrips from dead. Or 2 spells from dead.
Maybe.
Comes down to whether you think 10 is actually low or not.
I just look at the board right now, and if we're playing around your opponent having a cantrip, this isn't a good board for you either.
Well, drawing one. Maybe that's true.
I mean, if we're going to put him on having a cantrip, I mean, I think Ephro just attacks with everybody and you lose your board.
Fair. Eric waits on the plow. He risks Chris having some other thing, although I'm not sure what it would be. But waits for his turn so that he gets all the prowess triggers. Gets to deal 6 here. I assume Chris chump blocks. Maybe that's not true. 6 versus 3, not that different.
Yeah, not that different facing up 5 creatures.
I don't even know what Chris can draw at this point on the DAC. I mean, is Chris draw? He's not drawing live, is he?
I don't think so. It would have to be 1-mana spells.
Black Lotus, Time Walk
this will just get Force Willed, and that's that.
Well, yeah, there's that. Whew. So Eric Froehlich takes a game that Chris seemed like he was pretty far ahead in circa turn 4.
Yeah, that turn he played Jace. Everything fell because he hadn't played the island the turn before. Everything fell apart. He didn't have the Pyroblast up. He ran his Force of Will into Flusterstorm. It was tough.
Yeah. Rough game. Now, Eric says, get the hell out of my deck, Stony Silence. So does Chris. Eric has a Supreme Verdict. Does Chris have a Supreme Verdict?
I would be surprised in his 3 comes
Chris
back.
does not have a Supreme Verdict, but Eric does. And Chris doesn't have, I mean, without Sudden Shock, he doesn't really have red cards that help him. It's not like his sideboard is like, well, he can bring in a Path if he really wants to try. He can bring in, I think what he did was bring in Mindbreak Trap to try to win counter battles.
Sure.
And then he's got the 3rd Pyroblast, 2 main. He can board in the 3rd. Interesting. Yeah, but I feel like just the fact that Eric has a Supreme Verdict is, I think, just more important than anything Chris is able to sideboard. We shall see. Lots of mentors in these hands.
It allows you to play a very different game, that's for sure.
Right. Chris needs a land.
Well, this is going to get Spell Pierced on top of it.
That's not good.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call there whether you want to see another card before you brainstorm, so you don't brainstorm lock yourself, but also turn on your opponent's Spell Pierces and Flusterstorms.
My intuition matched Chris's. I don't know how many Pierce/Flusterstorms Eric actually has. It's 2 Flusterstorms, 1 Pierce.
I actually would have been very tempted to Force Will back there.
Force Will, wow. Eric answers with a Brainstorm of his own, but a better Brainstorm. The original Ice Age art. Strictly better.
So how many of these Force of Wills do you put back? The answer is 1. Yeah. This is tough for Chris now that Eric knows what's going on.
Oh, jeez. He can Lotus Mentor Gush with Force of Will to defend it all. Although, I guess that turns on the Mindbreak Trap.
Yeah, that's the third spell. I don't even know that I would cast the Mentor.
Yeah, you could actually just save the Black Lotus so that next turn you go land Mentor, then Lotus.
Looks like Chris is considering Force of Willing Lotus.
Huh.
Oh, okay. Maybe not. He was just clicking on some spells in his hand. I was surprised.
Interesting. Eric plays the Lotus, but then ships. What's the value in playing the Lotus there?
So you're not turning on your opponent's Mindbreak Trap in later turns. I think it's just better on the board.
Fair, even with a Mentor in your hand.
Yeah.
Interesting. Eric did, of course, see the Mindbreak Trap, so.
Yeah, the only mystery to Eric right now is the Treasure Cruise, which Chris is a bit of a distance from.
We got to get at least one old-timer into playoff contention, right, Bob? I mean, I guess we get that either way here, but you look at that playoff group so far. It's crazy. Paul Rietzel, Rodrigo Tagores, and then Oliver Tew. They just keep getting younger.
Well, hey, Rodrigo making it into the VSL is the end of my deck tech. Been keeping in touch with him for a couple of years since the Vintage Championships 1 year.
Sure.
He was expertly piloting his storm deck even back then. And boy, I mean, every 3 weeks I would, just message him on Facebook, and he would have a list of new vintage decks. He's just constantly going through them and brewing and keeping an eye on the metagame. So it does not surprise me at all that he's in the winner's bracket.
Eric forces Chris's Force. Mindbreak Trap is not turned on because Eric played that Black Lotus last turn. Oh, so the way Eric sequenced it, he was able to play the Mentor and have the Flusterstorm up. So he would have been good even if Chris had top decked a Force of Will. Yeah, Eric sequenced that really well. Chris does get to play a Mentor of his own, and Eric does not have an answer on the spot, but it's almost like Eric has some kind of initiative advantage, being the one with untapped mana. Do you just Gush here? I guess that's what he's going to do.
That's what he's going for. Huh. I don't think I would. I'm sure in just a moment Ephraim will prove me wrong.
I don't mind it. It's not like he had anything else going on.
Mm-hmm.
He found a Force of Will. Like, if you find a Force of Will and you get to Force of Will that Mentor, I think it's just really good. And now he's got the debate. Okay, he found a Path and a Force of Will.
I think you just let it hit the board and then Path with the 2 mana.
He knows Mindbreak Trap and Mentor are 2 of the cards in Chris's hand, too, so unless that Treasure Cruise is a Gush, Eric will not get punished for letting this resolve.
But as long as your Mentor's staying on the board, your opponent ending up getting 1 Monk token, and you getting to leave yourself with Flusterstorm Force of Will seems well worth it. Or at least Force.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yep, there's the Path. Mindbreak Trap is not yet turned on.
No.
Please? There have been more than 3 spells cast. Yeah, but this is only Eric's second spell.
So I guess here, if that Treasure Cruise is a Gush, Eric could choose to Flusterstorm it, and then the Flusterstorm get Mindbreak Trapped, and then Chris would get 2 tokens out of his Mentor.
Yeah.
I still think it's worth the risk playing it this way.
I think I agree with you. Basic Island. Eric's got nothing to do with his blue mana, but whatever. He untaps with Mentor, 2 Monks, and a Force of Will, plus a Flusterstorm for good measure.
Yeah, this next Mentor's going to catch another spell.
Interesting. Now there's 2 unknown cards. Oh, Chris just told him about one of the unknown cards.
Yeah.
Which makes it even easier for Eric to let it resolve and point the plow at it. Treasure Cruise not actually turned on. Mindbreak Trap still not doing anything.
Wow. Looks like Eric probably has this pretty well locked up.
Yeah, I don't see Chris resolving the... Basically, Chris needs to resolve the Treasure Cruise. I don't see how that happens here.
No.
I mean, do you force to defend your Mentor?
Well, you also know about that Mindbreak Trap, so you have to commit your Force of Will and both Flusterstorms to defending your Mentor. But if you do, you have 7 power on the board and your opponent's at 12.
Right. Mindbreak Trap can now be hard cast, is your point.
Right. But, I mean, draw any spell off the top if you go that route, and the game's over.
I mean, you get 2 Monks out of that also. So I think I do fight.
Right. That's what makes the game over, because he'll have...
Oh, this is clever. Look at this. He's going to cast the Flusterstorm. He's going to say to Chris, are you interested in tapping mana? He's effectively playing around the Mindbreak Trap by just Flusterstorming for 2. Chris could pay, but then he won't have the 4 for the Mindbreak Trap. Smart.
I'm not seeing what that gets around.
Pardon?
Not necessarily
Chris is
seeing
never going to get to play the Mindbreak Trap. Eric can now counter the swords with the second Flusterstorm, and he's just up a Force of Will in his hand. Instead of spending Force in both Flusterstorms, he just spends both Flusterstorms.
Yeah, yes, he's up a Force of Will in his hand, and his opponent's up a Mindbreak Trap in hand.
Done. Eric hasn't played 3 spells in a turn the whole game. He's proven himself very skillful at this whole play around Mindbreak Trap game.
But I mean, just as a hard cast counter, the trap is cheaper than the Force of Will. I mean, you have no blue cards left.
Sure, I still like it.
I still think it's probably preferable.
Treasure Cruise still not turned on. We're up to 7 power. Any spell wins the game. One of those Monks is about to die for the team, I think.
No, that only does 10.
Oh, right. If he kills one, it doesn't do it? 2, 4, 6, 8.
11.
It does 11. It does 11. Hilarious.
Yeah, he's still okay with it. He's decided 11 is enough. Take him off Force of Will and sack lands.
Speaking of, I guess Chris actually does get to resolve this Treasure Cruise here, doesn't he?
He does indeed.
He doesn't have much mana left, but he does get to resolve it. And he would have loved to crack that fetch land. The plow there, I think, is actually pretty smart. Yeah, Chris has to completely tap out and can't find anything. So
that'll do it.
Eric Froehlich, ladies and gentlemen. Very well played match from Eric's side, in my opinion. Chris going out on his own terms. I'm cracking my own fetch land. I'm the one who's going to decide how I die, when I die. Props for that. But die he did. I really... Right. I mean, Eric talks about how those matchups they don't have that much play. And I mean, I guess a lot of those sequencing things can feel obvious when you're as good at a format as Eric is at Vintage. But I mean, I think there were a lot of little, subtle sequencing things that he just always gets right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that just seem completely basic to Eric, that he has 20 of those decisions in a game, and very few people are hitting 20 out of 20 the way he is.
I agree. And I felt like Eric has run badly. Between the first group, between tonight, I don't think Eric has drawn particularly well. I think his opponents have drawn better than him. And you know what? He's still alive. He's into the wild card group with a fighting chance to win this league for the 3rd time. So hats off to Efro.
It's good to see Efro stick around. I mean, either one of them would have been great. It's not that there's any weak links necessarily, but Efro is exceptional at this format. He's a lot of fun to watch.
That was fun to watch. That was, was a fun night of Magic. There's some interesting matchups in there. I don't know. The blue on blue matchups always have these. They're usually subtle, but I don't care if it's an acquired taste. I have acquired it. I had a good time. We even got to talk about draw go and playing lands. Good times.
I mean, I miss the old days of, mana shorting people at the end of their turn when it was just purely control.
And Chris and I had the same conversation. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Next up, you're supposed to ask chat if they've ever had the pleasure of casting an Amnesia.
Oh, I mean, I'm even thinking back to the days when you could actually mind twist people. But yeah,
sure.
Amnesia, all of it. It's just wild.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We've got one group left before we know what our postseason looks like. Come back next week where somebody's going to make the wild card group. That may not actually be the headline of what's up for stake, but among the things that are at stake next week will be a spot, the last spot, in the wild card group. We'll be back. I will see you guys then. Thanks for hanging out, Bob.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.